Our next speaker is Debroski Herbert. Known as the worm guy in many circles, Debroski has been passionate about tropical diseases since he first started his research career. He completed a PhD in immunology at Thomas Jefferson University in Philadelphia and a postdoctoral fellowship at the University of Cape Town, studying immune responses to roundworms and schistosomes. His lab at UCSF investigates host immune responses to parasitic helminth infections. The title of his talk today is, As the Worm Turns, So Do We. Debroski.
Okay, thank you very much. So does anyone in this room marvel at the rapid advance it seems in our human race, particularly over this last century with regards to technology, our healthcare system, and even our living standards? But is there a trade-off? What about all these diseases that seem to crop up every year? You know, there's the obesity epidemic, metabolic syndrome, the rising increase in autism, and even restless leg syndrome, which seems to affect 15% of Americans, according to NIH. But I'm here to say that these are minor issues for the 3 to 4 billion people across the world infected with one or more species of parasitic helminth. The 3 to 4 billion people across the world that don't have proper health care, that do not have proper living environments. Here at UCSF, we care about the entire human race. We give our time, our energy, and our intellect towards addressing devastating diseases for the entire population. Our Global Health Sciences Institute and the graduate division, led by Dean Watkins right there, is leading the charge on training our next generations of scientists and clinicians. I'm going to show you my favorite story, and that is about the hookworm parasite. Now, I'm an immunologist and absolute parasite fanatic, and just like Liz pointed out, I am known as the worm guy in some circles. This parasite infects 740 million people across the globe. It's prevalent in areas where agricultural techniques are inappropriate, using human fecal matter, or where sanitation is insufficient. These parasites develop in the soil where they develop into infectious stage larvae. Now, the infectious stage larvae migrate out of the eggs, they climb up on blades of grass or other foliage, and they lie poised, ready to latch on to passersby. Once they latch on to exposed skin, either the exposed bare feet or the forearms of agricultural workers, these parasites quickly gain entry into the circulation. Once they've gained entrance to the body, they rapidly migrate into the small capillaries of the pulmonary tract. You can see here. When they reach these capillaries, they break out of the air spaces where they're coughed up and swallowed to enter the GI tract. I know it's a little gross, but. Now, we're studying this spot, that the biology of the parasite in the lung is very poorly understood. It's transient, but it induces a phenomenal amount of pulmonary injury. As it turns out, work has shown that the injury caused by worms in this spot leads to a type of pathology that resembles emphysema. Now, if you didn't know, emphysema is one class of chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, or COPD. You've probably seen the commercials on the evening news. Proposed to be the 3rd leading cause of death worldwide by 2030. Now, on the other hand, immune responses against the parasites of this spot lead to an inflammatory response that's almost identical to allergic asthma. Actually, most of us think that the evolution of our immune system has predicted our allergic responses to be actually maladaptive intended to be directed against worms. Now, in fact, the biggest discovery in the immunology community over latest years has been the discovery of a cell type that drives allergic asthma pathogenesis. This cell was first identified in hookworm models. So you can see that by studying the hookworm parasite, we're learning more about asthma pathogenesis, more about chronic obstructive lung diseases. Now, in my lab, what we're trying to do is try to understand lung repair. Let me not go forward. We're studying lung repair. We focused on a family of proteins called trefoil factors. Trefoil, just think the Girl Scout cookie. These are proteins released from damaged cells, and they help to regenerate areas of damaged tissue. So what we're trying to understand is, how does the body resolve inflammation caused by the worms and reproduce new epithelial cells to facilitate gas exchange? This is very important. So that's the philosophy of the Herbert lab, to follow the worm and to learn what it knows about the mammalian physiology and biology. Now, moving on. Once the worms have reached the intestine, they develop into adults where they latch on to intestinal epithelial cells and take out a plug for a blood meal. Now, this is a fascinating, ferocious parasite that secretes enzymes to prevent thrombosis. Anticoagulants derived from hookworms have already been mimicked by multiple biotech companies as treatments against a plethora of human diseases. Think heart attacks, pulmonary emboli. They're already using this. So you can see that by following the worm, we're learning much, much more than we could have imagined about drug discovery. I'll leave you with two more points. The first is that there's hard genetic evidence now indicating that, in comparison to any other pathogen that affects humans, the presence of worms in our evolution has been the single most important driving force for the adaptive polymorphisms or adaptive mutations in our interleukin genes. Now, if you didn't know, interleukins are the immune system's key communicative proteins. So it allows our immune system to orchestrate protective and pathogenic responses. So you can see again, here the worm knows us better than we know ourselves. So by following the parasite, we have novel avenues for drug discovery. And the last point I want to make is that maybe you've heard about the hygiene hypothesis. Okay, its basic tenet is that micro and macro flora interact with the immune system during our development in such a way as to promote balance, to attune our immune systems to the right chord. Now, the absence of hygiene is pretty evident, but did you know excessive hygiene can lead to overexuberant immune responses later in life? Immune responses that attack innocuous substances like metal, cat dander, pet dander, even the food that we eat, like peanut anaphylaxis is a major, major problem. These are lethal responses. What's more is that excessive inflammatory responses in the absence of balance, appropriate balance, which I would like to say is because of a worm, can lead to autoimmune disorders. So excessive inflammation against myelin that covers our neurons, collagen in our joints, and even the beneficial bacteria in our intestines, leading to inflammatory bowel disease. So, in sum, with all of this, I certainly hope that you can see that as the worm turns, so do we.